Well, what do you know? I'm doing another video on Team Liquid. I feel at this point maybe I should just start a whole new series just about Team Liquid with all the news that's been going on with that team. But as you saw today, it was officially announced that Liquid had picked up Pimp. Now, of course, we had some pretty good ideas that this was going to happen thanks to a report on ESPN by Jacob Wolf, as well as the wisdom of the old great Yi LMAO one of the CSGO subreddit. But now it's official news, and that's why I decided to go ahead and talk about it. Of course, I've done some recent videos about Liquid regarding their trade where they picked up JDM in place of Kusta, as well as this idea of dropping Adrenaline and bringing in Simple temporarily, so definitely check those videos out if you haven't already. But let's go ahead and get to the meat of this and talk about the acquisition of Pimp. Now, of course, Pimp comes to Liquid from SK Gaming, a team he had been playing with for the last 6 months. The highlight of his career at SK Gaming would probably be the CEVO Gfinity Season 9 finals, where they actually took a second place finish. They were able to do that by beating Dignitas in a 2-0 series in the group decider phase, so beating their Danish rivals and in fact Pimp's former team, who he had spent most of 2015 with. And then in the playoffs, they actually did beat Hellraisers in a 2-1 series in the semifinals to play against Tempo Storm, what is now Immortals, in a best-of-5 grand final that actually went all 5 matches. It was a very hotly contested series, really could have gone either way at different moments, it felt like. And Pimp individually came out of this event looking very sharp. I think he had plus 26 on the event, so really well done. And then when he had first joined the team back in January when they played at DreamHack Leipzig, he actually helped the team take a map off of Luminosity on Mirage, which was also kind of a cool map result, though the rest of that tournament didn't really go so hot for them. And I guess the most recent thing he had done with SK was, in fact, Week 3 of E-League, where they actually failed to make the weekly finals after losing to CLG in a pretty close series. But again, Pimp individually looked pretty strong at E-League, I would say. Then, of course, past all that, I already kind of mentioned he had played for Dignitas throughout most of 2015. I think the highlight of that would have probably been in July when he had this good run at the Gfinity Summer Masters 1 event where they had beaten Titan a couple of times in some separate best-of-3s, and they had some close series against NIP and Envious, and Pimp individually came out of that event with a plus 59 score, I believe. But other than that was kind of the highlight. Though, Pimp individually usually played pretty well. That team really didn't really get its rise, it seemed like, until after he had left, and they had brought in some others, and that's when Dignitas began to have their climb throughout the early part of 2016. Of course, if you go back even further than that, he was very famous on the Western Wolves team throughout 2013, where he had some couple of good events there. Competitive with NIP. Actually took a map off of NIP, I believe, at that DreamHack Summer event 2013. They had a really big Copenhagen Games event in that year where they were beating teams, like Very Games and such, and they had even beaten the Virtus Pro team, the CIS version of Virtus Pro, the team that had actually, ended NIP's 87-0 streak. They were actually able to do pretty well there as well. I will admit that I don't have so much information on Pimp's history past his time with Dignitas 2015, because back in that time period, I wasn't that deeply involved in the game. Yes, I was a play-by-play commentator for, some of the North American leagues, particularly with ESEA, and I was following the North American scene pretty well, but I didn't really have a deep understanding of CSGO, especially when it came to the international scene. Of course, now that's changed. Over the last year or so, I really have begun to double down and really kind of study the game at a deeper level, demo reviews and stats and results and all that good stuff. And so I can't really speak too much to Pimp's history prior to Dignitas, but I am sure someone like Thorin with his Thorin Thought series, or maybe some other articles you'll see out there, will be able to dig deeper into that and give that information. But I just kind of wanted to give you a shallow gloss over what we have been seeing from Pimp most recently, as well as some of his deeper history. But obviously, he's a player that's been around the game for quite a long time. He's proven himself to be quite a versatile player, particularly in rifle roles. I don't think his opping was always that great with Dignitas when he did it at times, but his rifling has always seemed to be pretty strong, especially here very recently with SK Gaming. And I can see him fitting into Team Liquid quite well, who is in need of one. Now, what role they decide to use him in is something I'm not sure about. He could be used in maybe a secondary entry fragger kind of position, which I did see him do at times for SK. I did see that happen a good bit, where you could see kind of other players and peripherals. It kind of depended on the map, to be honest, but you could definitely see Pimp being kind of a secondary entry fragger. But you do have this core entry fragging combo that Liquid has sported for quite some time, which is going to be Elysian Nitro being kind of the 1-2 punch. Now, it is true that Nitro has struggled a lot in that role lately. And in fact, he seems a bit lost because I saw him secondary opping a lot lately. So kind of changing things up a little bit on the CT side. So I don't know if he's once again experimenting with new roles, as he was the main opper for a short stint for Team Liquid. And it seems like at times maybe he's kind of second guessing what he should be doing and he's kind of in his own head. So I'm not sure if they would in fact move Nitro then out of a secondary entry fragger position and slot Pimp into that, who is, you know, a pretty skilled rifle who would certainly be able to help in that capacity next to Elige, or if in fact he'll be used as some type of support, a peripheral player, as of course Hiko will be the other, you know, lurker peripheral player type guy. So if they would maybe put Pimp in, you know, the opposite end of the map, and this trust his experience to make smart plays, relay good information, set people up, you know, maybe be a part of attacks on certain executes. I'm not exactly sure what capacity he'll be using. That's going to be up to Peacemaker, who is, you know, leading the team from the coach position, as well as the rest of the players, and Pimp himself, you know, having input, I'm sure, on exactly what's the best way to put this team together. But what is certain is that Pimp can bring a lot to the table to Liquid, despite how he is slotted, what role he is put in. For one thing, one of the main traits that Pimp possesses that has been highly praised by many in the community, including some articles that have been written by Thorin as well as Stuchu, both of which I think are featured over at the Gamers website. I'll actually try to find links for these articles and post them below. Is his heart, is this idea that he has so much dedication, that he truly does believe he can win no matter what, that he puts his all into it. The work ethic is so high, the passion for the game is so high. You know, his belief and faith that he can succeed and his team can succeed is so high, and that nothing really shakes him of this. And for a team like Liquid, who may lack for a bit of experience in some regards, and that also has shown issues with tilting, with kind of exploding, you know, struggling to close out games. I've mentioned these problems in other Liquid videos if you want to check those out in recent times. So I'm not going to go into the details, but we all know, you all know out there what I'm talking about, you know, the issues that Liquid have had closing games between, you know, the major at Columbus and even some stuff online against teams you think they should be okay against, and then what happened against Renegades at E-League and the 0-8 at E-League overall. Pimp should be someone that, with the work ethic he brings to the table, with the strong mentality that he has, you know, he himself as a player will still be able to perform under adversity, and hopefully he will be able to rub off on some of the other players and help their mentality, help their mental will, and hopefully address this problem that Liquid has, being able to just stay focused, stay in the game, not get overwhelmed, and just be able to close games. You know, hopefully he can help with this closing factor. This is one of the biggest problems that Liquid has had in recent times, is this idea that they have shown the capability of competing with some of the best and putting up numbers against some of the best and even putting themselves in positions to win against the best, but then not being able to figure out those final moves that they need to actually put it through. And so Pimp could be the type of guy to really help with that. Not only that, but he's just going to be, you know, a pretty skilled rifle in its own self. So that can help with the production of frags on the team. I mean, this team has already been prided a lot on the firepower that it has, and I think Pimp should just add to that. You know, I'm not sure exactly where you would rank him amongst the riflers on this team if you feel like someone like Elysian or Nitro is going to be a bit more explosive than what Pimp's going to be able to be. But for what I've seen out of him most recently from MSK, when I mentioned some of these lands he played, like Sivo, the Sivo Gfinity events, and this other stuff, I have seen him be able to be flashy and get kills. And then on top of that, you just have this strong mental will that he possesses. And it's not even just in the game, it just seems like it's in life with this whole weight loss story that Pimp had, which was actually personally inspiring to me. It's actually what helped me kind of get on the right track with my health and stuff like that, watching his video that he did about, you know, the whole story of how he had come to identify a problem in his lifestyle and then make necessary changes to better himself as a human being, not just in the game, but in life in general. And so just understanding that personality, and I've spoken with Pimp very briefly. He may not even remember us speaking together, but he just seems like the type of guy that really has a good head on his shoulders and is going to be able to help the team in many different ways besides just in the server if he does decide to kind of take a leadership role, maybe take people under his wing. Maybe people on the team will openly come to him and ask, for advice, and I think he can be a great source of that. So I feel like he's going to be a wealth of experience. I mean, this dude's been a seasoned veteran in international CSGO since its conception. He's at different times in his career proven to be a fantastic player, and throughout his entire career, he has proven to be a great teammate and a guy who can really help the team environment and the mentality of the team. And so when you put all of these things together, this move should be great for Liquid. At this point, Liquid has put together a roster that should be capable of great things. Now, whether or not they're going to put the pieces together and mold the team to be able to actually do that is a question that we can't answer. We just have to see if Peacemaker and the rest of the players on the team are going to be able to sort things out. Of course, they won't even have Pimp available to them for quite some time. I can only assume that this is because, Pimp helped, SK try to qualify for this major, and so he can't be a part of Liquid for that reason. So I have to assume that's what the holdup is. So that means they're using Simple, of course, for ECS finals and the major at Cologne. But then Pimp will be a part of the team later. And so they can't even really begin to focus on how to implement Pimp and how that team's going to play out, for at least another month or so, right? The major is going to be, I think it's July 4th weekend for us Americans. So I can't remember the exact date, so I think it's like the first weekend in July. So that's about a month away. So it's going to be until after the major, about a month and a half from now, before they really will actually start to figure things out. And that basically means that this is on hold until then. So we can't speculate too much about what it's going to be like until we actually start seeing them after the major really focus on this particular five that includes Pimp. And I think I'll just kind of leave it at that for the most part. In conclusion, with Pimp, I think that he's, a player that can add a lot to this team from an in-game standpoint, from a skill standpoint, to a mentality standpoint and experience. I also, talked a little bit about his career, and I think it's a good move overall. I can't really argue against it. I wish the best for this team and Pimp, and I hope that they can work things out, because now they should be putting a roster together that's certainly capable of being the best in North America and should be an international contender in the future if they can work everything out. Now, this does lead some question about what happens with SK now. I mean, I've heard Glaive is apparently going to stand in for SK at DreamHack Summer, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure if that would be like a permanent thing. You also have to wonder if SK is even going to be a team going forward for much longer, with all this, drama out there about how SK was supposed to be picking up the LG lineup and how that whole process was supposed to complete in July, which is just a few weeks away. I don't know if that means the player contracts on SK are up in July, since they were going to be trying to bring in a new team for that month. And going forward, so I don't know if SK will I don't know what's going to happen between this LG SK, debacle that's going on, but I'm not sure where this leads to players. If SK would just, if they don't want to get in the LG team, if they're just going to sign the Danish players again and try to make a roster and go forward, or if the team will eventually kind of fizzle apart and the players will go their separate ways. I have to imagine that a team like Dignitas would certainly be potentially interested in some of those players from SK, particularly someone like Magic's Boy, who has really elevated his level of play lately. Before he was always great online, but on LAN he wasn't quite hitting the mark. He'd have a good map here or there, but it wasn't anything consistent. But lately, we have seen Magic's Boy look a lot better. Particularly, I noticed it at the, CVO's Season 9 LAN with Gfinity that I was at. But there's been some other events around that same time period where you've really seen him pick up his game. So I feel like he has to be someone that's maybe, being viewed by SK as a potential player, and maybe some other players as well. Or maybe they will just keep the four together minus Pimp and bring in Glaive or someone else and still try to make something happen with that team. That's certainly a possibility as well. It'll be interesting to see what happens on the other side of this exchange, how the other party responds to everything that's happened here in this particular move. And with that said, I'll go ahead and cut the video now. Hope you enjoyed. Please follow and subscribe for more content. Thanks a lot.